Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing a team report style video on this Kyogre team that you see behind me right now. I did use this team to get 72nd place at the European International Championships a few weekends ago, and more recently top 16 at the Vancouver Regional Championships this past weekend. If you guys are just here for the team, because I know a lot of you guys do that, rental code is up above and down below along with that poke paste. But as always, if you are interested in trying the team, I do encourage you to stick around. I'll be going over a lot of stuff, probably quickly over matchups, the EVs, and what they do on the team building process, and all that good stuff as well. So feel free to stick around for that. But that's enough rambling for me in this intro. Let's jump right into it. Okay, we might as well kick this one off with the actual Kyogre. There is a lot to be said and not a lot to be said about this piece. First off, this team entirely in its whole, I firmly believe, is one of the best teams in the format. I also think that if Origin Pulse was 100% accurate, this would hands down by far be the best team in the format. So I am putting up with Origin Pulse misses, and my disclaimer right now, if you are going to get beyond frustrated with a couple Origin Pulse misses, do not play this team. I know I'm that guy, and I know I complain about Origin Pulse misses a lot. But as long as you're able to kind of settle down in between rounds and just kind of refocus on that next match, you're okay. It's okay to complain about an Origin Pulse miss, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen at a bad time. It's inevitable with Kyogre. My mentality was that it's like, I'm allowed to complain. But at the end of the day, I made that acceptance. I signed off on that basically when I signed up for the tournament with Kyogre. So it made it a little bit easier to kind of get over and refocus up on the next game. Because you are going to miss Origin Pulses. I have lost sets because I missed Origin Pulses. It's inevitable. Just got to kind of get away with that. You're allowed to complain, but get it out of your mindset pretty quickly after so. Anyways, not a lot new here, guys. Once again, we saw Oliver Eskelin pilot this team very, very well at a lot of the European events earlier on in Reg G, as well as World Championships last season as well. So, huge shout-outs to them for the original build here. Not a lot team building process-wise. I will get into a couple things that I did change or tried to change and then went back. So, stick around for that. There are some interesting takeaways in there as well. But like I said, nothing crazy. You go Origin Pulse, you go Ice Beam, because you can't run mono water, because you definitely need coverage on this Kyogre. And Ice Beam is a super consistent move, hits the grass type, absolutely a must-have here. This entire moveset is a must. You need Protect right now. I don't love the AV Kyogre Wo-Chen teams in open team sheet. Just because once your opponent realizes that the Kyogre can't protect, it becomes a little more difficult to realistically truly position that. So I definitely think Protect is a must, and especially if you're running the leftover set with grassy terrain, you know, you just take some damage, you get the grassy terrain chip back, you get the leftovers recovery back, and then you can just Protect, and then you get both of them again, right? So the ability to heal with this piece is so strong. The ability to set up, you never really need more than one Calm Mind, unless there's like a specific calc you need to hit in a certain matchup, or if they're going to try and setting up with you, then you can try to get to that second one. But more often than not, I'd say stick with one Calm Mind, then start clicking whichever move you so choose, realistically. More often than times, you're allowed to click Origin Pulse, but make sure you're not just clicking it, because sometimes you only need to pick up like one piece and it dies to Ice Beam. So keep that in mind as you're playing this. Real quick with the spreads. Basically, I could sit here and say every single calc that this bulk is built for. There's a lot of them. I think it's like -1 Wood Hammer. From Rillaboom, I'm taking pretty much almost, I think it should be 100% of the time, assuming they're like the 116 attack ones. If they have more than that, it's a little bit of a roll. But 116 attack Adamant Rillaboom is pretty common, so that's kind of what I calc for. If I Terra Grass, it lives the Ice Spinner from Jolly Shenpao as well when that's at when we're at full, which is pretty good. The special defense was kind of just thrown. I'm Calm Mind on this team, right? So I know +1 is often an option. I didn't really want to have an odd number with 4, so I just bumped it up to 12. It also helped out versus some of like the Calyrex Shadow stuff as well. Like there was no like specific calc, but having a little bit of extra bulk there isn't really too crazy. And 125 speed, I think, is the key takeaway here. You can definitely play around with the bulk. That's up to you. Like drop some bulk, have some more special attack. 100% up to you. Room to play around. Do not go lower than 125 in my opinion. I think 125, based on the nature of this team, is by far the minimum speed you can run here. Now you can probably get away with it. The way I've learned to play the team and the way I approach my matchups, I really like 125. Realistically, basically, because we have drum beating on Rillaboom and we can knock things down to -1 speed. -1 speed, Modest Miraidon hits 124. That also is the same to be said for, like, Modest Fluttermane. No one's running that though. Modest, Adamant Shenpaus, right? Just outpacing those when they get down to -1 speed is absolutely massive. So sitting at 125 is great. Now you're saying, it's the Miraidon matchup. How often are you really going drum beating into the Miraidon? And honestly, surprisingly, more than you think, right? That matchup is a lot of just trading off, the pieces. We'll get more into that with the matchups, but -1 speed Miraidon, being able to outpace that does matter. So I definitely wouldn't like going lower than 125 unless I found a different line into Miraidon, which maybe you do, and in that case, feel free. But I do think 125 or a little bit higher is absolutely correct. You can probably bump it up to like 128 because then you're outpacing the max speed Modest Raging Bolts. But I knew that was falling off into format and didn't really want to go for that either. I know people are going to go into comments and going, why are you 193 and not 192, since 192 is the lefties number? Basically, long story short, somebody told me one time that because super effective damage is always going to be an even number of damage, like based on when that multiplier hits the damage calc, the damage output that they're going to provide is always going to be even, so it's going to end in like 0, 2, 4, right? Those kind of numbers, right? I opted to go odd, and basically the concept is they'll never be able to do exactly 193. If I was at 192, they can do exactly 192. This gives me a little bit more. It's entirely useless. It is entirely useless, totally unnecessary, and it could just be wrong, right? But I know I'm going to get a lot of comments if I don't mention it, so I stuck with 193. I thought it was cool. The concept of that sounds cute as well. Effectively useless. You can probably go down to 192 and get a little more bulk if you wanted to put it into defenses. You can probably do that. I don't know what those calcs look like. I saw 193 as an option and said, sure, why not? Instant, there's not much to talk about. This is bread and butter standard Incineroar. Okay, straight up. There's nothing to talk about here. Your Terra Ghost, Safety Goggles Instant, knockoff Will-O-Wisp is just incredibly good at shutting down those physical attackers, which Kyogre doesn't like. It's also very nice to Will-O-Wisp your own Kyogre to get out of potential spores or other statuses that you may not like to see. Sometimes I did it for Toxics. I didn't want to get Sludge Bombed. Like if I was worried about a Sludge Bomb poisoning me, I would also burn myself. But that's just like out there. It's mostly just you can side Will-O-Wisp for the sludge for the spore, and then of course Parting Shot, Fake Out. But other than that, there is technically something to be said about going specially defensive to help with the Shadow Rider matchup. However, I really was bringing Instant quite a lot on this team. A lot of the times I was bringing Instant, Rillaboom, Amoonguss, and Kyogre. Those were my 4. In fact, so much to a fact that I actually forgot there was a Tailwind mode to the team. Like there was a whole stretch of like 2 days where I just brought the balance for, and then lost my next game that I played the day after because I was like, oh, I should have just been bringing my Tailwind mode. That would have made that so much easier. I forgot I had that, So I'm very balanced. I'm a very balanced-based player, so I do get into habit of that. But a lot of the times you're bringing this Rillaboom and having that physical bulk to, Terra Ghost and then live Surging Strikes in the rain is a huge calc for this instant as well. And you're living a lot of the Calyrex Shadow stuff anyways. And I have a Roaring Moon if I need to do that as well. So, like, if the instant starts falling to the Calyrex Shadow stuff, Roaring Moon, very good in that matchup as well. Basically, once again, this is pretty standard set, guys. 244, 188 is a little bit past the bump. Very good for Surging Strikes rolls. I think pretty much this is almost bread and butter, like the example calc or the example set for Incineroar. I opted for 82 speed. I'll get into that in a second. Then I just had as much special bulk as I can. A little bit of attack, guys. It's a bread and butter instant. There's nothing here. Speed, you can technically be faster. I stuck with 82, and the concept there was if I get Tailwind up with Roaring Moon, my instant is now faster than any Urshifus as long as they're not a boosting item, so that I'm able to get a Will-O-Wisp off there. But I'm also now going to be slower than the Calyrex Ice Rider on the on that Tang Ice Rider team, which is like the Roaring Moon, that Tailwind one, the Roaring Moon, Landorus, Calyrex, Ice Rider. And the concept there was if Ice Riders are going fast, right, they may still look at my team and try to maybe get Trick Room up. So now I can pin them out of Trick Room with the Kyogre with big Origin Pulse damage, and in Trick Room by being able to get like Will-O-Wisp and knockoff damage off into that Calyrex before it's able to attack. That was basically the speed stat. You can definitely go faster if you don't think that's a necessity for you, especially because I feel like as I kept playing this team and the more I played it, there were less and less people who actually tried to set Trick Room versus me, because I also do have an Amoonguss, right? So sometimes they don't set Trick Room versus you, so if you're okay just, going with a little bit of a faster instant, feel free to make that change. I'm probably not going to bother making that change. I do like having the, if they're faster than me, it's fine, and then I have Ogre for that, and then in Trick Room I also pin them with my Incineroar. Not a guaranteed science. I did consider at one point doing like that really slow Incineroar, similar to what Wolf did on his Perish Trap team, but I didn't see necessary for it, so... You know what? Like I said, bread and butter instinct, guys. I'm rambling now. Literally nothing else to say here. Moving on, we've got Rillaboom here. Drum beating, Grassy Glide, U-turn, Fake Out. Nothing new. Once again, pretty common instant, especially on this Kyogre build. Oliver's been using it for a while on his team, and really just want to talk about drum beating here. I'll get into the spread after, but really making sure drum beating gets reiterated across the board. So when I first picked up this team, it was pretty much going into Reg G the second time, right at the beginning. I looked at Oliver's World's team and I was like, yeah, drum beating. Do I really need that? Yeah, sure, I'll keep it around as I test the team, because anytime I pick up a team, I don't like making changes or tweaks to my playstyle until I get a good chunk of games in to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And I picked up this team and I was losing. I did not like the way the team was piloted. It was not working for me. It just didn't feel good. So I ended up dropping drum beating, and I ended up dropping the team as a whole, to be completely honest. I dropped the team as a whole and went to Calyrex Shadow Rider and said, this is going to be my guy. Calyrex Shadow Rider was not my guy. Anyways, when I came back to the team, however, I decided to run Woodhammer. And the team was pretty decent. It was still functioning just fine. But I was missing the speed control, as obviously I would be, right? But Woodhammer's fine. I don't need speed control if I'm killing things, right? And I was struggling, and it was about 2 days out of EUIC, and I was just doing like reviewing footage and stuff, and I was watching the final set, and just the Oliver, basically of Birmingham, where it was Oliver versus the Miraidon stuff, and the drum beating was so key there, where it was like, oh, it's outpacing this Ogre Pond that was bulky, and now it's outpacing this Urshifu, and like that's like the huge issues I'm having with this team, is that I need my Kyogre to be faster than these pieces, and I'm like, I now see why drum beating was there. Do not get rid of drum beating. This move makes this team, it takes this team from what I think is like a very mediocre team to that next level, right? Just outpacing those adamant Urshifus is absolutely super important, because I just get so many different plays that you don't normally get if you just had Woodhammer, right? Like, yeah, you lose a lot of power. Drum beating is not one-shotting all those bulky Urshifus, but I don't necessarily need it to, because drum beating plus a combination, like a follow-up Origin Pulse, or even on some of like the Focus Sash ones, I'll go drum beating Ice Beam just to make sure I don't miss and get that KO. Right? It's huge for the Calc. It's huge for speed control, especially in matchups where I don't really want to be bringing Roaring Moon. So ended up bringing Rillaboom a lot. Drum beating was a huge tech. And I know a lot of players are going to look at this and go, oh, I want damage, not drum beating. Please do not drop drum beating. It's going to make the team so much worse. It's so good to have drum beating. And you can get away with it. I believe Hunter's team that won, it was a Latin American event recently, just before EUIC, they did go Woodhammer. So you can get away with it depending on your play style. But I think having drum beating just makes this team function so much better. I don't recommend dropping it. Anyways, spread, guys, it's 192. That's the grassy terrain number. Didn't really see any reason to not, especially when I was jolly, right? Like I know I was on Kyogre. Oh, I'll go odd, right? I'll go odd HP. It's funny. Here I stuck it with the 192. I need as much attack as much attack as I can going forward. I'm a Jolly Rillaboom, like I said. You don't do nearly as much as you'd think you would anymore because Adamant is just actually makes that much of a difference. So I needed every little bit of extra points into this attack, and that's where they ended up going. 132.28. This is basically to guarantee the max roll from the Modest Miraidon on Draco Meteor. So now I'm always able to live a Draco Meteor from the Specs Miraidon if I'm in grass, and that was huge for that matchup. I was not budging on that calc. That calc was not moving. You also need to be max speed to outpace the max speed Adamant Urshifus, which sit at 149. So sitting at 150 just makes sense there. If you're going to go for this and you're going to go drum beating, you definitely need to have that speed stat. 100%. No doubt in my mind. And like I said, there's really no exact calc for this 92, but 132, 428, 252 pretty much did what I wanted. Nothing else would have really guaranteed any survivals. So I just dumped as much attack stat as I could. Maybe it changes a couple rolls. Other than that, just that's all that really is. It's an attack dump there with whatever I had left. You might be able to play around, maybe lower that. I don't recommend it. I think getting damage off is always a good thing. This team has a habit of not getting damage off because you get caught up in like the cycle, right? And then all of a sudden you'll get to the end of the game and you're like, I have a +4 Kyogre, but everything on my team is at 4 HP and I haven't done really any damage yet. So making sure, and I wanted to put an emphasis on it just to kind of help me with that extra damage as the game went on, but could probably play around with that, but this is where I ended up. So Amoonguss time, and this is actually the one change between my team and Oliver's team, and it's going to be the Terra type on Amoonguss. I don't Terra this piece. I really truly do not click Terrestrialization on this piece. It just doesn't happen. You can do it. I like it for Raging Bolt matchups. I like Fairy more than Steel. Just because I didn't want to terrestrialize and then be pinned by like a close combat from an Urshifu. Now it's a very unique scenario anyways, but like Fairy just feels a little better. I'm also able to like redirect Draco Meteors if I need to from the Miraidon, which I will get into in a bit. Because in that Miraidon matchup, so the Miraidon players, long story short, figured it out. And figured out the matchup and to what our common plan is. So having Fairy here actually makes a very good adaptation to that. So I'll get into that when we get into matchups, but that is the Terra type difference. You can pretty much go Steel like Oliver. You can probably get away with Water, honestly. It probably wouldn't even be bad. Like I said, the ability to terrestrialize this piece does not come up very often in too many matchups. Sludge Bomb is huge. Please do not drop Sludge Bomb. Once again, when I tried to team, I was like, oh, Pollen Puff is cool. You know, you heal your Kyogre, right? Because, like, it's so tempting, you know, to just have Pollen Puff beside this setup Kyogre and just heal yourself more. You need the extra chip damage from Sludge Bomb. Potentially getting poisons is super, super clutch as well. Definitely important. Don't drop Sludge Bomb. You can maybe get away without Protect, but I don't know, guys. You're a hard balance team, guys. Don't drop Protect. I like Protect. Protect is a fun move. Spore, Rage Powder, Protect, guys. Like I said, common Amoonguss, guys. There's nothing new here. 236, 228 plus. That's going to live your Glacial Lance from Calyrex Ice 100% of the time. And I think on this team, that's a must. I know a lot of other teams, especially like the Calyrex Ice Rider teams, are transitioning to a little bit more specially defensive Amoonguss right now. But they can afford that. There's a chance that Glacial CIR can outrun you and just like absolutely decimate your team if you're not careful. So being able to switch Amoonguss in safely, and like if you're trying to think, oh, you're predicting a Trick Room and then they don't Trick Room, keeping Amoonguss alive for that, if they do have to eat a Lance, is always very good. It's just a calc that was kind of like a backbone for me. It's like, oh, I know I can eat a Lance if I get this call wrong, and it felt very good moving forward. 44 was just whatever I had left, I dumped there. The speed stat, once again, guys, this is 27. It's nothing new. We've seen this on Amoongusses throughout a lot of Regulation G, and it's basically underspeeding the min speed Cali Ices in the format while still being able to benefit from as much speed as it possibly can have, just in case you do end up in a Tailwind scenario with this Amoonguss. It's optimal, guys. You're probably going to speed tie a lot of other Amoongusses, and it's just going to be what it is. Like, you could probably drop the IVs if you wanted to be a little slower, but it just feels, this just felt like the best speed stat to hit. I'm not going to change my team because I'm scared of speed ties. This is just optimal, in my opinion. So I kept that speed stat. That's pretty much it. Once again, guys, bread and butter Amoonguss. Nothing crazy here. Really not a lot to talk about outside of that, you know, the different Terra type from Oliver's team. Urshifu, once again, it's a Scarf Ursh. There's not a lot to say. Terra Ghost I like a lot. Just being able to get out of fake out cycle while keeping my opponent in a fake out cycle is very, very nice. You can make a case for maybe like a poison or a grass. The problem I find with Grass Terra here is then both my water types would be Grass Terra, and I don't necessarily like that as much. You also have the scenario where it's like, sometimes you want to get out of a Bleak Wind Storm, and like resisting or becoming neutral to that flying type attack is very, very nice as well. So Ghost is just optimal, guys, I think. Once again, you can play around with it if you want. I never really tested anything other than Ghost. Like I said, it just felt the best in time. But Surging Strikes, Close Combat, Aqua Jet, U-Turn, those are the moves. There's not much else you can do. I debated maybe like a low sweep sort of thing over Aqua Jet. But sometimes just having Aqua Jet and being able to lock the Aqua Jet is super, super important because it can get you out of not only like the Raging Bolt Thunderclap mind games, but it also picks off like a 1 HP Shen Pal before they can get a Sucker Punch off because you're scarfed. So there's a lot of cute little small interactions like that this Aqua Jet is for. So I don't recommend dropping it. I think these 4 moves are just arguably correct. And that's that. Spread, by all means, go 252, 252. You can 100% go 252 attack, 252 speed, and figure the rest out. You could arguably go Jolly as well to outpace some of like the Scarf TUs and maybe like the Modest Scarf Landos, but I didn't really feel a need for that. Like the Landorus matchup is perfectly fine, and especially if they're Scarfed, I just don't need to bring my Ursh. Like I can just leverage with the Rillaboom into Ogerpon. Sorry, the Rillaboom into Kyogre. Too many different ogres nowadays, guys. I didn't really see a need for that. The Adamant damage with the Rain boost was super, super nice as well. Made sure to pick up a lot of secured a lot more knockouts than I would have had without the Adamant version of it in the Rain. So definitely like that, especially with like the Ogerpons going bulkier now. I think having the Adamant boost and the Rain boost together, that multiplier just adds up so much nicer. But once again, you can just go max. I don't think there's much else on the bulk. Once again, I just put 4-4-12. I just don't like running 2-5-2, 2-5-2 spreads, guys. The bulk doesn't actually do anything. I don't know. It's just there. I did live on 2, though. I did live on 2 HP one game because I had 4-4 here instead of like a 0-4. Because if I had just 4, it would have gone into Spit F. So instead of nothing, I did live on 2. So maybe it does matter. But effectively, doesn't really matter. Feel free to just go max here if you want. Whatever you're comfortable with on Scarf Ursh is probably fine. I do want to point out Adamant, though. That was really just a big takeaway there. Roaring Moon. I love Roaring Moon, okay? This Pokemon is like the definition of my play style. I'm able to get some offense off if I need to. I can go Terra Flying, blast through some things. I can support the rest of my team with Tailwind, and I have Protect. It just feels really good, guys. Of course, speed boosting as well. My big thing was being faster than Ogerpon. I wanted to make sure I was faster than Ogerpon, and it came up in the stream match at Vancouver, and you'll see why, and I'll tell you why in a second exactly. But I'm gonna go over my stream match on a separate video, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned. But for right now, I want it to be faster than Ogerpon. The way I like to approach the game is I like keeping my pieces alive, right? I like keeping my pieces alive, switching in and out, and just having the option to switch in and out, right? If I have this Roaring Moon slower than Ogerpon, let's just say, like maybe sitting around like 176-ish, where people do like to sit in this format. I think the Tang team was like 156. It was right in that area too, right? So like people like to sit around that spot. It's a common spot to sit, right? So I wanted to be faster than Ogerpon. I wanted to make sure I was faster than Ogerpon. That way, if I did happen to switch out or maybe not have my booster for whatever reason, I wanted to make sure I was faster than Ogerpon. And in order to do that, I needed to be 179. And I was 179. Going into EUIC, I stuck at 179. I said this is perfectly fine. Torn should not be too much of an issue. A lot of the Tornadus right now are chilling over at the bulkier end of things, and that was perfectly fine. Right, I was happy with it, and I had different couple spreads up here. I was like 84 attack, moved this around as well. Maybe I'll put both pastes down below, but this is most certainly the most recent paste, so I'll definitely highlight that. But basically, long story short, I wanted to outpace Ogerpon. That way, in case I switched out and came back in, I would still have the ability to outspeed it and hit it with that acrobatics before anything detrimental could happen, right? And then what happened going into Vancouver, I thought to myself, okay, Vancouver and West Coast North America tends to be a little more aggressive in their play style. I wanted to make sure that if I happened to play, I don't know, like a Tailwind Kyogre team or anything with Tornadus, that I actually didn't want to have to play this speed tie on turn 2. Because my matchup into Torn stuff would be, they're going to lead Torn, I'm going to lead Roaring Moon, we're both going to Tailwind, and I'm probably clicking either Origin Pulse or some sort of chip into the Torn slot to some extent. I wanted to be able to pressure Tornadus the following turn before it could do anything else, right? And I didn't want to take the chance that it was going to, it was always going to be bulky. So I bumped up to 180, and it just felt like a line that I could perfectly see in a world where Tornadus may be a little bit more common, right? So I wanted to make sure I was outpacing that. Once again, if I got Bleak Wind dropped. So basically what I can also do is maybe we play the game where we both try to stagger our Tailwinds. They go Bleak Wind Storm, I go Knock Off or something, right? The Bleak Wind Storm gets the speed drop on my Roaring Moon, let's just say, and then the following turn, or the turns after that where we both get Tailwind up, if we're both still on the field, that speed drop didn't matter because I am, like I said, still faster than Tornadus without that booster energy. Once again, minuscule, doesn't really matter, but I felt comfortable, and a lot of this Roaring Moon is knowing specific numbers, and I'm happy. That's all it is just knowing specific numbers that I could see a scenario where they pop up. Defense here. The defensive EVs are basically close combat from Adamant Urshifu at -1. So basically, if I have Roaring Moon and I switch Instant in, that Urshifu goes down to -1. I do not need to terrestrialize. I am 100% of the time living that close combat unless they double me up or I've taken chip before. And that was huge. Knowing that to me was absolutely massive. I did lose a little bit of bulk on the special side. I had at one point 100% chance to live the +1 Ice Beam from Kyogre with a little bit more special defense at one point. But I didn't see that was too necessary. And like if I'm getting into a Kyogre matchup, regardless, I have other lines into that. I do still bring Roaring Moon to that matchup, by the way, into the mirror. But like the 6.3% or the 12% or whatever it is to die to the +1 Ice Beam didn't really feel like a problem for me. Because like there was just a chance that they were like 156 modest anyways and still had a better roll anyways. So like I didn't want to live on something that I couldn't guarantee or rely on something that I couldn't guarantee. I did drop the attack. I was basically talking to Vince, is someone who I built with, and I'll give him a full shout out, proper shout out later on. But I was basically talking, and they were running like, I think it was like 12 attack, and I was running 4 attack after EUIC, and we went into the builder and we were like, all right, we gotta come up. What do we need to do here? And basically 36 still gave us a very good chance in the Koraidon matchup, like the bulky Koraidons, or the non-bulky Koraidons that Wolf basically popularized with the Life Orb, because they were just no bulk. And 36 gave us the best odds, like the best neutral ground odds to Terra Flying Acrobatics into Koraidon. And then it gave us the best odds still for them to die to the Life Orb chip afterwards. So the concept there was they're only going to get 1 attack. If we're sending a acrobatics that way, they're only getting 1 attack off and then they're dying to Life Orb, which is absolutely massive in this Koraidon and the Weather War there. But once again, minuscule, you can probably do a lot. I know like everybody hits the 84. 84 attack is like the number you need to kill off the no bulk Urshifus. I didn't care about the no bulk Urshifus. In my opinion, they're mostly sash anyways, right? This still gave me like, I think it was like an 87% roll to kill like the Scarf ones. I don't care about Scarf Urshifu, guys. Amoonguss is my main Urshifu answer. Kyogre, Rillaboom. I have pieces, my own Scarf Ursh, right? I have so many different ways to pick off that other 2%. I didn't think I needed to be at 84. You can totally go back to 84. Once again, if you're more concerned about the attack and not so much the speed, I do have my other spread. I'll leave that one down below. But this is the most recent spread that I've been using. I've messed around with this spread a lot. This is one of those things you go into the builder and you spend 3 hours in the builder, you move like 8 EVs in this one session. You're like, it's inspirational, guys. It's inspirational. It's like they call me a visionary kind of stuff. But like you can do realistically a lot with this. There's a lot to play around. But like I said, I like the benchmarks. How did I talk for 29 minutes about EVs? What is wrong with me? This team report should not have been this long. What am I doing? When you're running a balanced team, especially like what I feel is almost true balance like this, is I don't want to have rigid lines. So I don't have any lines that are like, you have to do this, 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 and this. I have things I enjoy doing. I have the pieces that I know I like to leverage. And I make my adaptations as the set plays out. That's the way I like to play the game. I like to consider myself a very, quote unquote vibes-based player. Like, I know what I'm allowed to do, I know what I'm not allowed to do, and I make my analysis of that as the set goes on. I do lose a lot more game ones because of that than I probably would like to or probably should, but that's not necessarily a end of the world scenario for me, especially with like a hard balanced team like this, because chances are you're always able to make that adaptation moving forward. In terms of Kyogre, the big pieces you want here are, I guess we'll start with Kyogre. I was going to start with Calyrex, but Kyogre, I guess the mirror matchup's a little weird, but you're going to want your Kyogre, and you want to do yourself a favor and try to not have to Terra Grass. You want to play this as the world where you don't Terra Grass, because if you Terra Grass, you're getting hit by U-Turn in the endgame, you're getting hit by Sludge Bomb in the endgame, you're getting hit by Ice Beam in the endgame, and you lose the Kyogre mirror if you go Grass, and it's especially the Calm Mind one, like in the full mirror, right? If you both Calm Mind set up and they're Grass and you're Water, you win, right? So you want to preserve that for as long as you possibly can. It's okay to use it. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely okay to go for that Terra Grass if you need to in that matchup. But I do try to preserve that Terra and hold on to it for as long as possible. I do like using it on Roaring Moon late game in that matchup. But other than that, like key pieces, you probably bring any 6 to that matchup. I don't love Rillaboom, but once again, if they're leveraging Rillaboom, Amoonguss, Roaring Moon, Kyogre, there's room for Instinct because it covers those 3, right? But there's another few lines. Once again, you got 6 Pokemon. All 6 are pretty good in that matchup. Leverage your Kyogre. Utilize Calm Mind. If it's the faster Kyogre stuff, I really did just like leading Roaring Moon Kyogre. And I basically base it on, do I want a Calm Mind or do I just want a Tailwind, Origin Pulse, and just match the speed stat? Different ways to play it. But I did like going for that mode. Really, really quickly now we'll go Ice Rider. If it was like the traditional Ice Rider stuff, especially with like the Ice Rider Raging Bolt, I really liked going Kyogre Rillaboom, surprisingly, with like Amoonguss Instant in the back, just because I felt like when there's a Raging Bolt, it's very, very difficult to trust both of Kyogre and Urshifu. Felt very difficult. You're more than allowed to bring it. I think Urshifu is a very good Pokemon into Cali Ice, and more often than not, you probably should be bringing it. But sometimes if you struggle with like the Ice Rider Ice Rider Raging Bolt stuff, it gets a little annoying. So you can definitely bring Rillaboom instead, or even just maybe drop like Amoonguss. Sometimes Amoonguss doesn't hold off too much, right? But basically your leverage into that is Kyogre. Once again, it's going to be restricted, guys. It's going to be a huge part of your team. Instant Amoonguss, right? You want to leverage Kyogre, Instant Amoonguss to the best of your ability. Right, whatever you decide to do. I like leading like Instant Kyogre or Rilla Kyogre. Just basically fake out Mon so that I can fake something out and either get Kyogre set up into the scenario or just start sending Opulse. More often than not, I do like just fake out Calm Mind. It's when in doubt, guys. It's so good. When in doubt, fake out Calm Mind and then just start the cycle, the revolving door of Pokemon of Instant Amoonguss and Rillaboom as you get set up and then start launching Opulse. And it's one of the reasons for my nickname theme being the Despicable Me theme. And it's just so, there's something about Instant Rillaboom Amoonguss being the minions that are supporting Gru as the Kyogre. There's something about that that's just like so perfect to me. But I don't know. One of the main reasons for that nickname theme. But anyways, it's once again, when in doubt, fake out Calm Mind, start sending damage. There's really not much else to say there. The Miraidon matchup I do want to talk about. It got ugly. It used to be pretty good because a lot of the times the Miraidon players, they would leverage, we're going to try the Whimsicott stuff. We're not going to let you Calm Mind. We're going to pressure Encore, but that wasn't really a problem, right? With the fake out cycle and just the ability to get a Amoonguss on the field and grass, force the Miraidon off the field because we have our own grass, start dropping Sludge Bombs into stuff like that Whimsicott, never really became a problem because like you'd lead like Kyogre, Rillaboom, and you'd be able to, if you're worried about Whimsicott, you can just send damage. You don't have to Calm Mind. If you're not worried about Whimsicott, you can Calm Mind. I ended up going down in top 16 at Vancouver because of I lost to Calm Mind my games. I was in a spot where they had Whimsicott on the field, and I was like, we're good. I'm just going to U-turn. It's going to kill the Whimsicott, and then I'll be able to Calm Mind the same turn, and the next turn Whimsicott will be gone. I'll get my Calm Mind up. I'll be able to reset my Rillaboom later. The Whimsicott unfortunately lived. And the following turn, I had to make the call on if he thought I was going to protect or not. I should have protected. Long story short, I didn't. I got it wrong. Lost that game. And in game 2, I ended up double missing Origin Pulse. And like I said at the beginning of the video, guys, you're gonna miss at some point, and unfortunately it happened there. But I would have liked the game 3 there, because I think I had game 2 if either of those two hit. But regardless, that matchup just really pretty much dance around, preserve terrain, make sure you're not losing Kyogre immediately, and this is something I want to bring up. Amoonguss in that matchup, if they play it the way where they go like Farigiraf Miraidon and go Helping Hand Draco, you can just simply protect Kyogre turn 1, switch Rillaboom out into Amoonguss, let it go down, then they have a Giraffe, which doesn't do too much pressure, and a -2 Miraidon, and then you have your opportunity to start setting up, and that's kind of the way I like to play that. But obviously, that's just like a secondary option, right? I don't want to lead into that. So my adaptation for that would be game 2, you could lead Amoonguss Kyogre. If they led the exact same thing, you could double protect, basically scout what the Miraidon wanted to lock into. More often than not, they pick the electric move there because they're scared of the Terra Fairy. They don't want to drop a Draco into a Rage Powder Terra Fairy. I don't recommend Terra Fairying in that scenario. Like I said, I think the double protect is the best option for you still. If they do decide to lock Helping Hand Draco, then you can just, Terra Fairy is safe. They might have to switch out, but at that point it's safe. Wait till you know what they're locked before you pop that Terra. But overall, I think that matchup is arguably fine. Rilla, Kyogre, Amoonguss, Urshifu are those cycle pieces that feel pretty good. The Zamazenta matchup, guys, it's Instant Amoonguss, Urshifu. Those are your 3 pieces. I like leading Kyogre a lot. I like going Kyogre instant. It feels like it gives me the most options because I'm always just able to intimidate something. I can switch Kyogre into a quickly offensive board state, into a big defensive board state with the Amoonguss, while I Terra Ghost the instant, and then that just pretty much a perfect cycle, especially into a lot of the Zamazenta teams that try to leverage the way they normally do. Overall, pretty happy with that stuff. The other options you can go for are like instant Amoonguss with late game Ogre, but I don't need Kyogre in that matchup. If they're going to give me Kyogre in that matchup, I'm going to start clicking Opulse. Go ahead and wide guard. You're not doing anything with your Zamazenta at that point. I'm fine with that. Right? So I like to play that matchup as like, oh, Kyogre is just so free here. I'm just going to, if you kill it, it's not great. Now, I mean, you got to make sure you're getting the leverage with the rest of your team. So I'm not saying just sacrifice to Kyogre, but it's definitely not as important of a piece. Terrapagos is really tough just because you don't really have big ways to deal damage. And especially like those bold Terrapagos that are coming out on the the Terrapagos Screamtail stuff. If you can dodge Terrapagos, I highly recommend it. Some options though for you are like Calm Mind Wars. Get into that Calm Mind War. Just it's problematic if there's Screamtail because then you get encored and disabled and then you start crying. But you can do that, right? And then you can just try to cycle with Instant and Rillaboom. Amoonguss is very good if they are not substitute. If they are substitute, Amoonguss loses a lot of value, and I like to obviously bring Urshifu in that matchup, right? But if there's no substitute, you can probably drop one of your fake out guys and focus on bringing Amoonguss, Rillaboom, Kyogre, Amoonguss, Instant Kyogre, stuff like that. Something I do want to talk about is Roaring Moon has an interesting spot in that matchup as well, with just knocking off and being faster to potentially get Tailwind up, help you with that cycle. The problem was, even with Tailwind, Kyogre wasn't faster than the Booster Energy Screamtail, so I would still just get Calm Mind cycled. Basically, don't play Screamtail Kyogre. That matchup is super tough. Sorry, Screamtail Terrapagos. Terrapagos is problematic. What am I missing? What other matchups? Shadow Rider, I basically pick based on like the Shadow Rider balance stuff. It's a lot of just Roaring Moon Kyogre and just leveraging your pieces. Roaring Moon Kyogre, Rillaboom Instant, and then once again, if you feel like you need to get some sort of more offensive pressure out, drop one of Rillaboom or Instant for Urshifu. And if they're going like hard balance and they have like no psychic move, Amoonguss is very, very viable in that as well. Start getting some spores off, put some pressure out that way, some passive pressure, match some Calm Minds. You can do a lot like that. Lots of stuff you do there. I really like that matchup actually. I think it's one of the best matchups for the team. If I had a format where I just played the horses, I think both horses are very good matchups for this Kyogre team. Obviously, assuming you're hitting your moves, but once again, as I said, that's basically the waiver you signed at the beginning of the team. That's the waiver you signed when you signed up with this team. That's what you signed off on. So, definitely think it's something to consider. But definitely don't, I don't know, there's a lot of matchups, there's a lot of different things, and like I said, I didn't give you guys any, like, rigid lines, right? Like, here's the concept, Koraidon, I guess we could technically talk about. Koraidon, Groudon, concept's the same. Lead, like, I like leading Roaring Moon and a slow pivot, so that whether that's Roaring Moon Instant or Roaring Moon Amoonguss, that's what I like to do into the Weather Wars. If it's Groudon, though, you can definitely lead like Urshifu Amoonguss instead. And then just like switch Amoonguss out into Kyogre and start Surging Strikes the board. It doesn't work as well into Koraidon, obviously, because they resist a water move. So it's like you get less value out of it. But the Koraidon stuff, I like leveraging Roaring Moon and a couple slow pivots with Kyogre. The Groudon ones, I find Urshifu and slow pivots with Kyogre tends to be a little better. There's probably some matchups I missed, guys, but this thing was not meant to be 40 minutes long. And of course, just to conclude, guys, really want to point out some of the people that helped me with this team. First off, obviously, huge credit to Oliver Escalin, original paste for the team. Obviously, he hasn't released yet, but that's who created this, right? This concept of this team, the way this team plays, that's all Oliver. Full credits there. Of course, for my version specifically, huge shoutouts to Gabe for, helping me run Kyogre, fine-tuning some stuff. Vince as well, helping me figure out matchups, team building as well, spreads, talking out. And just both of them are huge supports as well, guys, moving forward with tournaments and stuff. It's like halfway through the tournament, it's like, what's going on? Always good to have somebody, you work with the team with. If anybody watched my post-game interview on stream the other day, it's basically, I said friends are overpowered, and honestly, I stand by that statement. Just having friends in this community is crazy, whether it's support, whether you're actually building teams with them, whether, you just need someone to, pick you up and shake you halfway through the round because just like you need a mental reset. Like, for whatever reason, just having friends, there's so many different benefits to just having friends with this community, and this community is amazing, so there's so many opportunities to make friends. One of the best parts of this community. But anyways, huge shout out to Gabe and Vince. Really helped me fine-tune this team, run some lines and all that jazz as well. Huge shout-outs to the Small of Garden. Obviously didn't build this one with you guys, but did definitely run some lines, and you guys are keeping me sane throughout the whole tournament as well. So I do appreciate that, guys. Obviously, I can't name everybody. If you guys help me with this team, I really do seriously appreciate it. If I ran a line versus if I said, hey, even if I sent you a message and just complained about the Terapagos matchup, because I'm going to be honest, I think I sent like 7 people messages saying that, oh my goodness, how do I beat this Terapagos team about like 2 days before Vancouver, because I was so concerned about playing against that Terapagos Streamtail team. But anyways, so many people I messaged, anybody that did help me out, even if you just simply cheered me on along the way, that support is absolutely incredible. So thank you. With that, I'm actually at 896 championship points, so super close to my invite. Obviously can't really officially like secure anything, but this team is a huge part of that, and I really did want to share it because I'm pretty much done with Reg G, and hopefully it can maybe help out someone else, in case anybody else, of course, is still needing to finish off Reg G. I know we still have a couple European events as well as some North American, Latin America events as well. So if you're interested in a team, here it is. As always, like I said before, rental up above, paste, and rental down below as well. But with that, guys, I'm going to stop rambling. This was not meant to be a 43-minute video, but here we are. So with that, thank you all for watching. If you guys do enjoy this type of content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help with the channel, and of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get on out of here, and I will catch you all in a future video.